Chapter 676. The Immortals Descend. As the battle axe appeared and eldest senior brother grabbed it, a primal and savage air erupted swiftly from his headless body. That presence turned into a gigantic vortex and started sweeping in all directions from the entire area where eldest senior brother was standing. The world rumbled, causing drastic changes in the faces of immortals around the area. It was especially so for Jian, whose eyes had begun shining with a brilliant light. He stared at Su Ming's eldest senior brother, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. Even with all his experience, he had never noticed the plans Su Ming's eldest senior brother had harbored. Only at that moment was he able to see that determination and resolve within him. This person has an incredibly powerful will. That was why he was able to retain a small portion of his will even after he was controlled by Di Qian, and that will was resisting all this while in the depths of his soul. But the way he resisted was a little unique. He didn't struggle, but instead used Di Qian's power to stimulate his blood, which was equivalent to Di Qian helping him gain the greatest boost in the evolution of his blood. He even cut off his own head so that his blood would return to that which belonged to his ancestors. With Di Qian's power, he allowed himself to successfully turn into Xingan's will and bravery. This person is the same as Su Ming. They're both incredibly difficult to deal with, and by the looks of it, this Xingan's presence is even a little stronger than Su Ming's. The things he told Su Ming previously belonged to Di Qian, but were also his own words. It was especially so when he used his head to knock against Su Ming previously. No one would be able to see anything off with his actions just now, but they're fellow brothers under the same master, so it's clear that Su Ming had been able to detect something. Jian's expression turned dark. The process of forming his deductions after the events was much easier compared to forming all those guesses before everything happened. It was just as Jian had thought. Su Ming had mentioned that he had come to understand something earlier, and what he had come to understand was the meaning behind his eldest senior brother's actions. His eldest senior brother was a blade, and the person holding onto that blade was Di Qian. That blade wanted to become sharper, and it needed a whetstone. Su Ming understood his eldest senior brother's intentions, and he was willing to become that whetstone and sharpen the blade used by Xianxia to fight against the heaven. The moment the edges of the blade were sharpened marked the instant the blade would turn against the person controlling it. Not only did the act of sending his own head flying into the air show how fierce and powerful eldest senior brother's will was, he had also managed to cut off all ties connecting him to Di Qian. That was why the Di Qian which had appeared from the head when it flew up had shown disbelief on his face. As his soul disappeared and eldest senior brother lifted his body from the ground, the face that was protruding from his chest seemed to look at the sky. During that instant, a muffled roar that shook the sky erupted from eldest senior brother's mouth. Youngest junior brother, I don't know where master went. His presence has disappeared from the land of berserkers, but I can sense that he hasn't died. However, your second senior brother's presence is incredibly weak. He's in Great Leaf Immortal Sect. No matter the results of this battle, you must go to the land of berserkers' Great Leaf Immortal Sect and save your second senior brother. Eldest senior brother's voice reverberated in the air until the ground trembled and the sky roared. Youngest junior brother, your cultivation base is still showing signs of increasing, and you still can reach an even higher level of cultivation, but your heart is not resolute. I can tell that the world of berserkers has acknowledged you. The world of berserkers' kismet is upon you, and you are the fourth god of berserkers. But you still haven't acknowledged the world of berserkers and the kismet in you. You also haven't acknowledged the status of the fourth god of berserkers. I will fight this battle for you. Think carefully on whether you want to accept the title of god of berserkers. Eldest senior brother was usually a man of few words, but at that moment, he uttered a long string of them. Almost at the same time he said all that, he took a step towards mid-air. During that instant, Jian's pupils shrank. He could feel a wave of killing intent and savagery from Xingan. Jian moved and formed a seal with his hands before he swung his arm. Immediately, an endless amount of light hoops appeared around his body. Those light hoops surrounded him like a dimensional mouth. At the moment that happened, an eerie and sinister presence swiftly spread out. Su Ming's eldest senior brother closed in and lifted the battle axe in his hand to cut down on Jian. A booming sound surged into the sky. These two people immediately started fighting fiercely. The near 100 imperishable shaman souls on the ground lifted their heads, and at the same time sobriety returned to their faces. They roared towards the sky, then cut off their heads at the same time. Once they became similar existences to Su Ming's eldest senior brother, their heads turned into battle axes. When they held them, they instantly flew up and charged towards Ji, and Su Ming was silent by the side. As he watched his headless eldest senior brother fight against Jian and listened to the continuous rumbles in the world, what appeared in his head was his eldest senior brother's words. They branded themselves in his heart. It was indeed as eldest senior brother had said. Within the depths of Su Ming's heart, he had not acknowledged the world of berserkers and its kismet. He did not have the desire to become the god of berserkers. If his memories of Dark Mountain were fake, and if everything was fake, then he was not a berserker, and he did not have the blood of berserkers flowing in his veins. If he continued tracing back, he would find that the memories of his childhood were clearly different from those of other berserkers. The only reason he had succeeded in the first berserker's initiation and obtained the right to practice the ways of berserkers was because of Su Ming touched the black stone fragment that had been hanging over his chest for many years. It was all because of it. Su Ming was feeling slightly miserable in his heart. In truth, he had noticed a long time ago that he was a tree without roots. He floated in the sky and did not know where he was supposed to go and where he could return to, neither did he know where he was born. In this state, he was indeed unable to acknowledge the world of berserkers, its kismet, and that he could possibly be that god of berserkers. "I'm not a berserker," Su Ming mumbled. The rumbles in the sky continued. 18 gigantic statues appeared behind Jian. Each of them looked incredibly strange and evil, and all of them had different appearances. There were some in the form of people, and some in the forms of beasts. They were filled with ferociousness and evil, and they were also exuding an eerie and chilling presence. There were also presences akin to those of vengeful souls on the 18 statues. However, they were not filled with grudges. They were instead filled with bloodthirst and murderous intent. It was as if they were not creatures that existed in the world, but came from the boundless galaxy. They were ferocious spirits that had drifted about for years. Their roars were incredibly unique. While sounding piercing to the ears, they were also sonorous. When anyone heard them, they would find their chi and blood flowing backwards, their heartbeats increasing, and their emotions changing. As Su Ming looked at the 18 statues, his pupils suddenly shrank. He seemed to have recalled something and felt that the roars from these ferocious, murderous fiends from the world beyond sounded rather familiar. It was as if he had heard them somewhere before. Yet right at the moment this sense of familiarity appeared, but before Su Ming had the time to mull over it carefully, a loud boom that sounded as if the sky had shattered suddenly traveled from the sky. At the instant these roars rang out, a presence that did not belong to the land of berserkers spilled out from the sky. Su Ming sensed it instantly, because at the moment that presence came down, his body immediately started showing signs of decaying. Su Ming swiftly lifted his head. When he looked up, he saw the 2 gigantic runes that had originally been there but had later on been hidden away by the distortions in the sky. The presence that did not belong to a berserker but clearly was one of an immortal was spreading out from the runes in the vortex, which looked as if they had sunken quite considerably. Bright Yang's presence. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. His past self would have been completely unable to withstand the Bright Yang's presence. Yet now, he had 1/2 of a Bright Yang stone sealed within his body. As he continuously resisted that presence, he could last a little longer under compared to his past self. His eyes sparkled at that moment, and with one move, he charged towards the 2 runes in the sky. He did not need to listen to the excited voices coming from the tens of thousands of immortals underneath. He could tell himself that there were immortals descending to the place. Almost at the instant Su Ming closed in, the booming sounds instantly increased exponentially. Right before everyone's eyes, 2 gigantic light hoops appeared, shining with a piercing light in the sky. They descended to the ground with a bang, forming 2 gigantic pillars of light that connected the sky and earth. Several figures could be seen within the 2 pillars of light as they shone. In their distorted and indistinct states, these figures gradually appeared, and as if they were being elongated, as the forms of these figures gathered together and shrank, their bodies slowly showed up. Almost at the moment these people showed up, but before they completely regained their forms, Su Ming closed in on them with killing intent surging within him. He was so fast that he rushed into one of the pillars of light in the blink of an eye. At the instant he stepped in, black fog that surged into the sky immediately spread out from his body. He was not letting out this black fog intentionally, but due to the thick and dense power of bright yang, it had naturally come out from within him as his body withered and aged. Su Ming's body started aging quickly, but not only did his speed not decrease, he instead traveled even faster. He quelled the pain that had appeared all over his body due to the power of bright yang and lifted his right hand swiftly to swing it in the direction before him. With it, 3 of the people who had yet to regain their forms immediately trembled, and shrill screams of pain came from another dimension. The 3 figures instantly crumbled and disappeared into the air. Su Ming did not stop for even a single moment. In a flash, he tapped another figure who had regained most of his or her form with his right index finger. As that figure shattered, Su Ming stomped the air beneath him, and with it, a large amount of ripples spread out violently under his feet. The ripples caused the 3 nearest figures to immediately begin trembling, and they exploded with a bang. Su Ming moved and clenched his right hand into a fist before punching the final figure in this pillar of light. This punch contained the full force Su Ming could gather within the later stage in the Berserker Soul realm. Along with the power he gained after turning his entire body into that of a true Berserker, even Di Qian's clone would need to be wary of this punch. As he hurled his fist forward, he punched the figure that had regained most of his or her form. Chapter 677. The Curse's Pursuit. The figure seemed to have let out a low growl and even showed signs of resisting against Su Ming's attack, even if he was still caught in the state of regaining his form as he descended. Clearly, this person had extraordinary power, since he could do such a thing. After all the other immortals descending to the place had been unable to put up even the barest form of resistance while their bodies were in the process of regaining their forms. They could only vanish while hate burned within them as Su Ming attacked them with his swift execution of his divine abilities. The figure lifted his right hand and formed a seal before he pressed towards Su Ming's incoming fist. The 2 sides clashed, and loud bangs surged into the sky. A layer of ripples instantly spread outwards before tumbling backwards, shaking the pillar of light so much that it almost crumbled. Su Ming staggered nearly 1,000 feet backwards and his qi churned within his body. When he lifted his head, a brilliant light appeared in his eyes. The figure in the pillar of light shuddered and crumbled swiftly, turning into thin black threads that eventually vanished into thin air. This person had failed in his descent, and even if he did not die, he would definitely be injured gravely. A roar filled with discontent came from the pillar of light from another dimension. Who attacked me? I'll remember this. Next time I come here, I'll definitely destroy you 1,000, no, 1,000,000 times over. Su Ming turned a deaf ear towards those words. He might have dealt with the immortals descending from this pillar of light, but there was another one. At that moment, several figures were rapidly gaining form within it, and 2 of them had even taken a step forward, as if they wanted to walk out of the pillar of light. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Immediately, threads of black smoke manifested around him. That black smoke instantly gathered on his right hand, and almost in an instant, the Undertaker of Evil's spear appeared. Once Su Ming grabbed it, he swiftly lifted it up and tossed it towards the other pillar of light. The Undertaker of Evil's spear was like a purplish-black dragon that sliced through the air with a piercing whistle. It instantly shot into the pillar of light and penetrated through one of the figures who was taking a step forward. When Su Ming lifted his right hand, formed a seal, and pointed towards him, that figure instantly exploded and turned into a large wave of impact that swept through the entire area within the pillar of light. It caused the figures that were still regaining their forms to freeze for a moment, and during that instant, Su Ming closed in on them like a shooting star. He rushed in among them. The black fog around him had covered his face, and wherever he went, the only thing that could be seen of him was an emaciated hand that looked like a skeleton stretching out from the fog. That hand crushed all the figures that could not put up any form of resistance, but among those who descended, there was one who retreated swiftly under Su Ming's ambush. That figure had only regained half of its form, but he did not slow down the slightest in his retreat. Almost at the instant Su Ming stepped into the pillar of light, that figure avoided the Undertaker of Evil's spear and shot back in desperation. He turned into a pale-looking middle-aged man dressed in a black robe, and as he ran, his expression was filled with livid sullenness. The evil Sky Sect's sect elder was among the first batch of immortals descending to the land, even though he could not have his real body come to the place. He could only form a magical body and send it to the land of berserkers. But even if this was just a magical body, it could still bring up power that could suppress the berserkers. After all, based on the immortals' knowledge, the strongest group of people in the land of berserkers were only equivalent to those who had reached Great Circle in ascendance. Yet during the instant he descended, he sensed a life-threatening danger that made his skin crawl. He had never expected something like this to occur in the process of him descending to the land of berserkers. This was something that he had never even considered. No matter how intense the battle between the immortal sects and evil sect were, they would not do something like destroying the bodies of those who had yet to regain their forms. This sort of thing was too despicable. And the immortals would definitely not accept it. Who are you? Once the black-robed man shot out of the pillar of light, he swiftly retreated. When he lifted his head to look, there was no longer any of his people in the pillar of light. There was only an illusory figure surrounded by fog, and that person was leaving with a single step. Once the person surrounded by fog walked out of the pillar of light, most of the fog dissipated to reveal an old face. However, his face soon started squirming about, recovering rapidly. When he took his 7th step, Su Ming regained his normal appearance. Just what is going on? The man in black's face turned even paler. The strange sight of Su Ming's body had filled him with fear, and his act of destroying the immortals who descended made him wary. In the distance, he could see a headless person fighting against Jian, and the booming sounds that surged into the sky due to their battle left him shocked. He did not know just what had happened in this place. It was especially so for the tens of thousands of immortals standing on the ground. They consisted of people from evil sect and the immortal sects, but they only watched the immortals who descended be destroyed. None of them did anything to prevent this. In fact, as he looked over, he could see hesitation, and even fear on their faces. They are afraid. What are they afraid of? The black-robed man retreated once again, then lowered his head swiftly. Once he swept his gaze across the ground, he fixed his stare on evil sect's crowd. Shandong, tell me what is going on. The black-robed man clearly knew evil spirit sect's Shandong. As he roared, he could see the pained look on the man's face, but he did not manage to last till his answer. Su Ming's gaze landed on him at that instant. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he turned into a bolt of lightning that charged forward. The man's expression immediately changed. He instantly turned into 7 figures that spread out rapidly into 7 directions. His power had not completely descended at that moment, and he only had power equivalent to those who had achieved Great Circle in ascendance. As the figures spread out, he did not choose to escape, but instead had them charge towards Su Ming from 7 different directions. Su Ming might have intimidated him previously, but he also managed to determine Su Ming's origins. He had the presence of a berserker, and the most powerful group of people among the berserkers were only equivalent to those who had achieved Great Circle in ascendance. He had been ambushed in the Pillar of Light previously, so the man believed that it was completely impossible for Su Ming to fight him on even grounds now that he was out. As long as I hold him back for a moment, the second batch of immortals will descend, and at that time, this person will surely die, and I'll also know just what had happened here. But there's something really strange here. Who's the person fighting against Jian? He's actually preventing Jian from even have a chance to speak, for he has to pour every single bit of his attention on attacking. And where is Di Tian? As these thoughts raced in the head of the black-robed man, he charged towards his attacker. Su Ming swept his gaze around him. There were 7 figures. This divine ability was incredibly ingenious, he decided, but he didn't need to spend too much effort to find the real person. Instead, he chose to stand on the spot. Almost at the instant Su Ming stopped moving and froze in midair, the 7 people that were transformed from the black-robed man spotted glints in their eyes, and cold sneers appeared on their lips. In the span of a breath, these 7 figures accelerated and appeared around Su Ming right away. All of them formed a seal at the same time. Then, with a low shout and several dozens of feet between each of them, they pushed their palms at Su Ming. A power that belonged to those who had achieved Great Circle in ascendance rammed into Su Ming's body at that instant. Booming sounds reverberated in the air, but Su Ming did not move. He simply allowed those waves caused by the attack land on his body, then lifted his right hand to punch the fourth person. The world trembled. The fourth figure shuddered and coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. He immediately fell back, and disbelief as well as shock appeared on his face. This is power that has surpassed ascendance. You. As the fourth figure fell back, the other 6 figures shattered and were destroyed. The fourth figure was the black-robed man's real body. At the instant he started falling back, Su Ming had already disappeared from his sight. His heart trembled, and a strong sense of danger rose within his heart. He turned his head around, and as his pupils shrank, the final picture that he would see for the rest of his life appeared in front of him. It was a finger, and it filled his entire vision. That finger tapped the center of his brows, and a destructive power surged into his body with a bang. It tore through his flesh and blood, and at the same time it crushed his nascent divinity. A curse also fused into his soul, charging straight towards his real self in the land of immortals through the faint connection that existed between them. This is impossible. The black-robed man let out a shrill scream, and there was true terror within that scream. In truth, even if his magical body died, his real self would at most feel a decrease in its power, but his life would not be in danger. As long as he did not die, then he could redo everything. Yet now, the chilling curse within his soul could attack his real self through his magical body. This was something he had never expected and was the true source of his terror. When shrill scream rang out in the air, the black-robed man erupted with a bang and died. In the region of the endless floating continents in the Immortals galaxy, there was one continent at the center that had several altars built on it. There was a middle-aged man sitting on one of the, and that man was the black-robed person Su Ming had just killed. At the same time his magical body died, his body started trembling violently, and black patches appeared on his skin. They began rotting rapidly, and almost in an instant, they covered his entire body. That person opened his eyes and let out a shrill scream of pain. Fear appeared on his face and he swiftly stood up. He swung his right arm before himself, and a rune immediately appeared in front of him. He lifted his foot, intending to step into that rune. Yet almost at the moment he lifted his foot, his eyes turned dull and he trembled, then fell to the side. His body turned into black blood at that instant, and even his nascent divinity was unable to escape. He truly died. Moments before that, he saw more than 100 altars around him as well as in the other continents shining with a powerful light. It was as if the Immortals were about to activate another round of transportation and send another batch of people to descend. Su Ming pulled back his finger in the land of berserkers. He lowered his head and looked at the tens of thousands of Immortals on the ground. All those who met his gaze instinctively lowered their heads. Even if they were prodigies, and even if they were people who were familiar to him from his memories. The berserkers gave me strength. Su Ming's gaze swept past the crowd on the ground. The berserkers gave me the power to search for the truth. There are people here who I can't bear to part with. The home which I will find hard to forget is here. I was born here. My existing memories contain the presence of the land of berserkers. Then, from now onwards, why should I not be a berserker? Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the 2 still operating runes in the sky, which had the presence of Immortals descending to the place appearing once again. There was no longer any confusion in his eyes, but a look of determination, resolution, and also acknowledgement. When you learn who you are no longer you. When you no longer know who you will be you. The faint song of a zun that carried with it an ancient air resounded in Su Ming's ears. Chapter 678. Great Completion in the Berserker Soul Realm. I am the god of berserkers. Su Ming lifted his head and said these words quietly in his heart. At the instant they echoed in his heart, the presence of those descending appeared once again within the runes in the sky. Those presences came from new Immortals, and they were coming from their distant land. It was also at that moment that the rainbows beyond the 2 runes increased, and the distortions also became even more violent. Sounds of something being ripped apart shook the sky and earth, and there seemed to be a faint voice roaring continuously towards the ground from those distortions. God of berserkers. If anyone listened closely, they would be able to tell vaguely that those roars were crying out these 3 words. Su Ming's statue of the god of berserkers appeared instantly before him. The torso that had no head and only 2 arms was exuding an endless mighty pressure. Under that pressure, Su Ming's eyes shone with a brilliant light that surged into the sky. My statue of the god of berserkers still lacks a pair of legs before it can reveal itself in its complete form in the universe. I am the god of berserkers, and the 3rd god of berserkers' soul shall be my statue's left leg. As Su Ming spoke, he lifted his right hand and swung it forward. Immediately, the 3 pearls that were transformed from the 3rd god of berserkers' body after he died flew out. Those pearls turned into an illusory old man in midair. That old man opened his eyes, and once he swept his gaze across the land, he looked towards Su Ming. His obscured face made it impossible for anyone to see his appearance clearly, but they could still tell that he was smiling. As he smiled, the old man's figure gradually disappeared. Almost at the moment he completely vanished, the left leg of Su Ming's statue appeared. Su Ming's hair moved without wind. He watched the old man disappear, and saw the smile on his face. That was the smile the 3rd god of berserkers' soul left behind throughout the ages. That smile contained acknowledgement. At the instant the statue's left leg manifested, Su Ming's cultivation base erupted within his body and reached the pinnacle of the later stage in the berserker soul realm within an instant. Only a membrane stood in his way to attain great completion. As Su Ming's cultivation base increased, his presence was like a tidal wave that shook the sky and earth. The roars within the distortions in the sky grew stronger, and more rainbows appeared all around the area. The figures within the pillars of light that were formed due to the immortals descending from the runes were gradually showing up. There were about 100 of them, and they were rapidly gaining form. Su Ming did not bother himself with them. He looked at his own statue of the god of berserkers, then closed his eyes. When he reopened them, he lifted his right hand and swung it swiftly against the sky. With it, the sky boomed, but those booming sounds could not cover Su Ming's voice, which brought shock to all the people's hearts at that moment. 2nd god of berserkers, you, who exist as soul fragments in the world, who cry out during each day of eternal creation, are you willing to gather here and become my statue's right leg? I swear the oath of a berserker to you, I will surely destroy the immortals and take revenge for you. Su Ming's voice reverberated in all directions, causing all those who heard it to swiftly fall silent. Besides the booming sounds from Jian and Su Ming's eldest senior brother's battle still ringing in the area was in dead silence. Su Ming silently waited for his answer. If it had been any other moment, his words would not have obtained any answer, but now, he had the world of berserkers kismet in his body, and he was in the process of forming his statue of the god of berserkers. His voice fused into the world of berserkers, and it reverberated with his meaning. All the soul fragments in the world could hear it. Time passed. With each breath, more immortals appeared within the 2 pillars of light from the vortex. Some of them had even almost completely gained their forms. Then, a whiff of green aura appeared out of nowhere at the empty spot where the right leg was supposed to be for Su Ming's statue. Soon after, more of it manifested from all directions of the world. As that aura gathered together, it formed an indistinct green figure before Su Ming. This figure's appearance was as obscure as that of the 3rd god of berserkers. His eyes were blank when he turned, as if observing Su Ming. Su Ming also cast his gaze on the indistinct green figure. The meeting of their gazes made the sense of familiarity that was hidden within the depths of Su Ming's memories rise up once again. This had happened the first time when he fought against Sai Ma Xin and stepped on the 2nd god of berserker's arm. Right then, as this sense of familiarity rose up the second time, a dazed look appeared on Su Ming's face. He seemed to have returned to that unknown time all those years ago. In his ears he heard a baby girl's cries, a woman's gentle voice soothing her, and also, a man's voice that was filled with dignity, but at the same time a sense of gentleness. The 2nd god of berserkers. The green figure in Su Ming's eyes was made up of the 2nd god of berserkers' soul fragments, which had scattered through the world. This was the embodiment of all his unwillingness to admit defeat and his grudge before his death. At that moment, he was looking at Su Ming, and his empty eyes slowly gained light. Then, he gradually closed his eyes. At the instant he did so, the green figure charged towards Su Ming's statue of the god of berserkers to turn into its right leg, causing this statue to truly stand in the world. At that instant, Su Ming's cultivation base erupted with a bang. At the same time, His statue became mostly complete and was only lacking a head. The statue of the god of berserkers that stood in the world was 10,000 feet tall and looked like a colossal giant that was exuding a mighty pressure which shocked all the immortals in the sky. The first god of berserkers. Xianxia, who left the land of berserkers, who crafted the berserkers' enchanted vessel to protect the entire land of berserkers. The legacy you left behind will only last till the third god of berserkers. It is impossible for the fourth god of berserkers to appear among the berserkers, because they no longer have any legacy and inheritance. That is why if that person really appears, he would no longer be the fourth god of berserkers, but would be a new god of berserkers. Then, I will use the monument you left behind and the items you scattered in the land of berserkers today to make the head for my statue. From now on, I will lead all the berserkers into new glory. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he swiftly opened his mouth. His words reverberated through the world and caused the world to resonate with him. During that instant, all the ferocious beasts in the entire land of Berserker's Eastern Wastelands, the islands of South Morning, Northern Province, and the Alliance of the Western region started worshipping the sky while letting out shocking roars. Hidden in the forest of Eastern Wastelands was Berserker Fang tribe. There were several thousands of people kneeling on the ground behind the old man standing on the empty ground at that moment. Their bodies were trembling, and the desire as well as the expectation in their eyes had almost reached their limit. Their gazes were gathered on the old man, who was the only person standing. At that moment, he was looking silently at the sky. After some time, he seemed to have made a decision in his heart, and he turned his head around and looked at all his tribe members behind him. Oh well, the flames within us have caused our blood to reach a boiling point. We of Berserker Fang tribe will take this risk, and if we succeed, the berserkers will be different from now on, and if we fail, we will die buried under the berserkers' sky. Berserker Fang tribe, come with me to pay our respects to the god of berserkers. The old man swung his arm, and roars immediately rose from within the forest. In the span of a breath, nearly 10,000 long arcs charged out into the sky to move towards the spot where their burning blood directed them. The person in the lead was the old man. The tribe that was hidden in the mountain range had moved out earlier than Berserker Fang tribe. They could no longer remain silent. The flames in their blood had increased their level of cultivation, and at the same time, a will had also erupted within their blood. Eventually, most of the people in the tribe chose to fly into the sky to meet the god of berserkers. All the berserkers in Eastern Wasteland erupted at the same time and charged towards the spot where Su Ming was from all directions. Right at that moment, Su Ming swung his right hand at his statue of the god of berserkers, and a gigantic stone monument immediately flew out from his storage bag. An ancient air spread out from it, and it was the legacy the first god of berserkers had left behind after he went away. Su Ming's words made the stone monument shake as it flew out. It crumbled on its own and gathered instantly on the empty spot where the head of Su Ming's statue was supposed to be. Within an instant, that dust turned into a head. That head had no features, but its appearance completed the statue of the god of berserkers. As his statue of the god of berserkers was completed, a vast presence spread out. The world rumbled, and the statue slowly turned its head around, and its featureless face was like a mirror that was looking at Su Ming. During that instant, he completed the final requirement to arrive at the Berserker Soul Realm having his own reflection on the god of berserkers. Curves immediately appeared on the featureless face of the god of berserkers, and gradually, a face that was the exact same as Su Ming's took shape. At the instant that happened, all the rainbows in the sky crumbled with a bang and gathered within the statue. The distortions in the sky all collapsed as well, until there was not a single one left, and the sky to become transparent at that moment. The sky in this area was not the only part that became transparent. The entire berserker's sky turned transparent during that instant, causing all the berserkers to be able to see, perhaps for the first time in their lives, the true berserker's sky. The world of berserkers had no sky. There was only a gigantic vortex. It was large enough to cover the entire land of berserkers. It did not matter which corner a person resided in the land of berserkers, they would be able to see that gigantic black vortex in the sky. The vortex was still spinning at that moment. It was formed by an endless amount of dense fog that isolated their world from everything beyond. As it rotated with loud, booming sounds, some ferocious beasts that were several hundreds of thousands of feet in size or even bigger occasionally appeared within the fog. However, while these creatures might be big, compared to the vortex, They looked like little animals in an ocean, and they could not even hope to compare with it. This was the true Berserker's sky. This was also the sky that had existed during the first god of Berserker's time. The sun, moon, and stars that appeared later on were all fake. They existed because of the Immortal's rune. At the instant everyone saw the sky, all the Berserkers who were flying stopped moving and stared blankly at the vortex. As for Su Ming, at the instant the face of his statue of the god of Berserkers appeared, his cultivation base broke through the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, and he attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm. Chapter 679, the 37th time. At the instant Su Ming attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm, a sharp, extreme pain immediately traveled out from the seal in his head. That pain caused veins to pop up on his face as cracks appeared on the seal. Su Ming sensed the power coming from the dimension once again, but it felt as if it was no longer coming from another dimension. It was instead not too far away from him. Over that spot was a pair of eyes, and they were staring at him. They were interfering with the cracks in the seal so that it would not break open. Instead, as the seal continued breaking, those cracks repeatedly closed up, resisting again and again within Su Ming's consciousness. He could clearly tell that this was the power that had been trying to seal his memories all this while. The only difference between then and now was that it had previously been in another dimension. Right then, it seemed to be right in front of his eyes, having arrived in the land of Berserkers. Su Ming lifted his head slowly. The eruption from his cultivation base, the resistance in his consciousness, as well as the cracking and subsequent closing of the seal caused a large amount of red to appear in his eyes. They looked as if they had turned crimson red, and as he swept his gaze across the area, his eyes landed on the pillar of light that was descending from the rune at that moment. "Are you all ready?" Su Ming asked hoarsely. There was an unimaginable amount of power from the world in his body. He even had the feeling that he could cause the entire world to crumble with a single thought. If he was the sky, then the sky was also him. As his words traveled through the air, his voice seemed to have become one with the sky and rose with a loud rumbling. His words even sounded like a law that was implemented the moment it appeared, resulting in the trembling of the entire world. As his voice reverberated in the air, the two pillars of light from the runes began shivering, as if they were about to be unable to handle his might and crumble. There were nearly 100 figures within those pillars of light, most of which had already completed their descent, and all of them were silently looking at Su Ming with their hearts filling with shock. They saw the entire process of Su Ming attaining great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm, and they also saw the 10,000 feet statue of the god of Berserkers before him. The terrifying might spreading from it caused their hearts to race. Su Ming's voice caused the pillar of light to tremble, which brought disbelief to the faces of all those people watching. "Welcome to the land of Berserkers." Su Ming swiftly lifted his head. At the instant his words left his mouth, the world rumbled, and the two pillars of light trembled violently before they crumbled with a bang. At the same time, the people within them instantly shot out in all directions. Most of these people had extraordinary power, and some of them had even reached Great Circle in ascendance. There were even 2 of them who had power equivalent to Di Qian's clones. Yet at the instant they rushed out, Su Ming lifted his right hand, opened his palm, and seized in the direction before him, just as he did all those years ago when he saw the old man in the undying and imperishable realm, and just as he did towards the endless undying souls in that world. Su Ming was doing the exact same thing he did in that world. At the instant he lifted his right hand, his statue of the god of Berserkers also lifted its right hand and performed the same action. Booming sounds instantly rose into the air, and most of the immortals from the pillars of light froze. As their bodies trembled, they let out shrill screams filled with despair and exploded with a bang. As that happened, wisps of life force tumbled backwards and charged towards Su Ming's right hand. Once he held them in his fist, the power of his curse spread out and rushed straight to the land of immortals by tracing back the trails provided by the rune. At the same time, Su Ming took a step forward, and his body instantly appeared before one of the cultivators with power equivalent to Di Qian's clone. That cultivator turned his head around, and dark green light instantly appeared on his body. Just as he was about to retreat, Su Ming lifted his left hand and pierced through the dark green screen of light, completely unperturbed by it. He grabbed the cultivator's chest and squeezed. The man's eyes went wide, and his heart was crushed. A curse also spread out and destroyed this person's nascent divinity before it went straight towards the land of immortals to destroy his real self. From now on, the land of berserkers is forbidden grounds to immortals, Su Ming stated calmly. Once he unclenched his hand, he turned around, his long hair dancing behind him. He lifted his left index finger and pointed forward. At the instant he turned around, the other cultivator with power equivalent to Di Qian's clone had already walked towards him. Mountains and rivers appeared in his hand, and the sun, moon, and stars as well as the entire universe also seemed to be contained within it. These things turned into a gigantic flag, and he was swinging it at Su Ming. Su Ming's left index finger did not stop moving. It shot through the flag and touched the cultivator's chest. That cultivator coughed up fresh blood, and as shock appeared on his face, he fell backwards. Su Ming took a step forward and snatched the flag with his right hand. Then, with his left, he hurled a fist towards that cultivator through the air. All immortals who come here will be killed. As Su Ming's flat, emotionless words reverberated in the air, his punch landed, and a voice that surged into the sky and earth shot up, stirring up multiple ripples in space. The cultivator's body crumbled and turned into pieces of flesh that scattered outwards. This person hadn't sent an ordinary clone, and the person before him hadn't either. Both of them had sent their magical bodies. Magical bodies were of a higher level than clones. These were existences that were equivalent to nascent divinities among immortals. Cultivators could entrust their lives to these bodies and refine them into beings that could help them preserve their lives. That was why their levels of cultivation were equal to that of Di Qian's clones. However, now that Su Ming had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm and obtained the world of Berserker's Kismet, killing Di Qian's clones was no longer a difficult task for him. Su Ming waved his arm and took a step forward to appear on his statue's shoulder. As he stood there, he looked at the sky, and a wave of killing intent appeared in his eyes. Di Qian, since you arrived a long time ago, why don't you just show up? As Su Ming spoke, the two radiant runes in the vortex that was the Berserker's true sky let out rumbling sounds again. At that same time, a man with a black crown who was dressed in a black emperor's robe slowly revealed his body below the rune, to its right. At the instant he appeared, a wave of power that even had corporeal form spread out from him, turning into thunderous booms that surged into the sky and traveled through the air in the process. This was not a clone. Su Ming looked at the black-robed Di Qian with a calm expression on his face. He could tell with just one glance that this Di Qian was clearly different from the three others he'd killed previously. This person gave Su Ming a feeling that Di Qian had not obtained this body via possession, but that it was truly born after gathering the power of the world. His features were also incredibly stark. There was not a hint of indistinctness that could be found on his face. In fact, this was the second time Su Ming had this feeling. The first had been when a man in black robes standing on a gigantic head in the black void while he himself was bound in chains after he left Dark Mountain to enter South Morning. The memory of it instantly rose in Su Ming's head. The first time he had had this feeling was when he had first encountered Di Qian's clone. With his power at that time, he had been unable to find many clues that hinted at the fact of him being a different Di Qian than the one he saw in the void, which was why the feeling he had the first time could be dismissed. From then onwards, he saw Di Qian's second and third clones. They might be strong, but they could not make that feeling appear within Su Ming, and he had never felt it again, up till now. It could be said that with Su Ming's current level of cultivation, at the instant he saw the black-robed Di Qian, a large portion of the seal on his memories tore up, and he seemed to have remembered something, albeit only vaguely. However, as vague as it might be, he had a clear feeling. This was definitely not the first time he saw this black-robed Di Qian. The person who had appeared in the void was this Di Qian. Perhaps more accurately speaking, this was the only one who could truly be considered as Di Qian. All the ones that Su Ming had killed previously were clones that Di Qian had controlled after he gathered his will and placed it on those bodies. This is the 37th time I sent my magical body to this place. The black-robed Di Qian said calmly. His voice had an ancient quality to it, and it was greatly different from that of his clones. The awe-inspiring air was absent in his speech, but there was an air of supremacy that made it seem as if he was looking down on all manner of living, even as his eyes were focused on Su Ming. Then he lifted his foot slowly and walked towards him. The previous 36 times I came here was because you broke your promise and failed to fulfill the pledge you swore all those years ago. You tried to fight against me, and in the end, I killed you 36 times. I never truly killed you, but only made you sink back into oblivion. This is the 37th time, and it will also be the last. Di Qian's emotionless voice seemed to be the law itself. As he closed in, the pain brought by the seal on the memories became stronger, and the cracks also increased in number. This time, there were more changes than ever before. It is also the only time you were able to destroy all my clones. However, in the end, you will still fall. There were only several thousands of feet separating the black-robed Di Qian from Su Ming at that moment. A sharp pain that was enough to drive him mad appeared in Su Ming's head, and his memories were gradually being restored. At the instant Di Qian took another step forward, a bang resounded in Su Ming's head, and a large amount of pictures erupted swiftly in his mind, turning into a chaotic mess in his brain. In the midst of all that chaos, he saw images that belonged to 1,000 years ago. The boy 1,000 years ago had been sucked into the void during the change in Dark Mountain, but he did not appear in South Morning. Instead, he had gone to a continent he had never been to before. That place was filled with wind and snow, and the people there were all strangers. The things there were all unfamiliar. Several hundreds of years later, when he arrived at the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, he found his memories and tried to turn against heaven. Di Qian appeared, and during that battle, he had been bound by an endless amount of chains. At that time he had lost miserably, and the person who defeated him was a man who stood on a gigantic head. He was the black-robed Di Qian standing right before his eyes at this moment. This is the 37th time I descended, and just like the previous 36 times, if you will manage to destroy my magical body, from then onwards, I will no longer be able to descend to the land of berserkers, and you will truly regain your freedom. I will even give you this plate. In Su Ming's newly appeared memories, these were exactly the same words spoken by the black-robed Di Qian before they fought 1,000 years ago. You truly disappoint me. This was the end of Su Ming's memories 1,000 years ago, and they came from the same person. The black-robed Di Qian walked towards him slowly and asked flatly, "Do you remember now?" Su Ming's eyes became even redder. He lifted his head and glared up at him with killing intent flashing in his eyes. Just like the previous 36 times, if you can kill my magical body, then you will truly be free from now onwards, and I will give this plate to you. As Di Qian spoke, he lifted his right hand, and a black plate flew out. There was a complete spine on that plate, and a ghastly presence surrounded it. At the instant Su Ming saw this thing, a loud booming sound instantly resounded in his head. He'd seen this plate before. Chapter 680. The Berserkers Arrive. Among those 36 times, there were 19 when you fell under my abyss sword. This time, I'd like to see how you will fare. When Di Qian moved forward, his presence was like one Su Ming had felt when he first saw him all those years ago. It was the presence of supremacy that was like mountains crushing his body, and as it charged towards Su Ming in an attempt to intimidate him, Di Qian lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the sky. A ray of dark light instantly appeared above and charged towards Di Qian's right hand before turning into a sword on his palm. This sword was Di Qian's abyss sword. It was still the same, but the wielder of it before had been Di Qian's clone. Right then, the person who held it was Di Qian's black-robed magical body who had made Su Ming fall into oblivion time and again over a countless number of years. This magical body was connected to Di Qian's own life, and his strength surpassed all his clones. It was the strongest power he could muster in the land of berserkers. During the previous 36 times, Di Qian had used his magical body to perform the final judgment, and every single time he sent this magical body over, it would mean the end for Su Ming. Only at this moment did his magical body descend from the land of immortals, and it was telling enough that Di Qian had only now truly made his decision. The most important reason behind his decision was because his magical body had descended to this place 36 times over the years, and the force of the laws within the land of berserkers rejecting him had become incredibly powerful. Even if he did manage to descend, he could not stay for long, and so he had to end the battle as soon as possible. The other reason was because Di Qian had sensed a strong danger after the 36th time he made Su Ming fall into oblivion and sealed his memories. This sense had not come from Su Ming himself, but a pair of invisible eyes in the land of berserkers. This pair of eyes always seemed to be staring at him, causing him to only send his clones to the land over the past 1,000 years and not dare risk sending his magical body again, as it was connected to his life. If it was not because he had to destroy Su Ming, he would not have sent his magical body to the land of berserkers. Di Qian was also too worried to send someone else to handle this matter, and since all his clones were destroyed, he could only send his magical body. Once the abyss sword appeared, the boundless vortex in the sky suddenly increased the speed of its rotation for an instant, and a wisp of yin death aura was dragged down by the sword to the land. It turned into a ball of black fog that surrounded the abyss sword, and that black fog seemed to have turned into several faces of malicious ghosts once they surrounded the blade, and all of them were roaring at Su Ming. The first abyss sword is to extol the heavens. The second abyss sword is to rise the land. The third abyss sword is to execute people. The black-robed Di Qian swung the abyss sword in his hand, and it immediately split into three, resulting in 3 swords now flying around Di Qian. As they danced about, more yin death aura surged forth from the vortex in the sky. The fourth abyss sword is to send off souls. The fifth abyss sword is to mourn the body. The sixth abyss sword is to destroy the spirits. A glint appeared in the black-robed Di Qian's eyes. The 3 abyss swords swayed once more before they turned into 6 swords that formed a sword rune. They charged towards Su Ming with a sharp whistle, and the yin death aura that they stirred up turned into thick black fog that tumbled about and formed a gigantic face of a malicious ghost in the sky. As it howled, it charged swiftly towards Su Ming. A powerful sense of danger instantly rose in Su Ming's heart. That sense of danger came from his soul and from a spot in his memories that even he did not notice previously. It was as if his sealed memories remembered that there were a dozen more times when his body and soul had been destroyed under this particular style and he had sunk into oblivion because of it, just like Di Qian had said. If what you said is true, then this is the 37th time. I don't know why I would lose to this abyss sword the previous dozen-something times, but now. Su Ming did not finish speaking. As he left his sentence hanging, not only did he not retreat, but he even took a step forward. At the instant his foot landed, his body disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he was already right before those 6 abyss swords. At the instant he threw his punch forward, the 7th abyss sword is to bid farewell to life. The 8th abyss sword is to bury the void. The 9th abyss sword is to destroy. The black-robed Di Qian swung his arm, and shadows instantly overlapped the 6 abyss swords around him. Once another 3 other swords were added to their number, they turned into 9 abyss swords that clashed with Su Ming, and booming sounds reverberated in the air, surging into the sky. Su Ming's fist stopped for a moment. When the 9 abyss swords cracked inch by inch and fell backwards, they turned into fragmented pieces, but they did not disappear. Instead, once they fused with the fog, they turned into an eerie gigantic mouth of a malicious spirit that looked as if it had corporeal form, and it charged towards Su Ming to devour him. This power could devour all those who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul realm, so even those who had incredibly great cultivation bases would find it difficult to escape it. This backlash from the power of Yin Death came from Di Qian's ultimate divine abilities, and it was an attack that could kill Su Ming a dozen-something times in the past. Di Qian's magical body did not bother to hold back even a single bit right from the start of the battle. His attacks were all filled with killing intent. However, while this divine ability could destroy Su Ming a dozen-something times in the past, it could not deal even a little damage to Su Ming on this day. Di Qian had made a miscalculation, and this mistake would cause him to pay an unbearable price. In his memories, this was Su Ming's 37th awakening. To him, Su Ming's might came from the final burst in his cultivation base every single time after he awakened, and with each time, his cultivation base would be much stronger than before. Yet even so, he believed that he could control this destiny who had awakened for the 37th time. However, he did not know that this was not the 37th time Su Ming had awakened. He had awakened a countless number of times. Each destruction of his soul in the Candle Dragon's undying and imperishable world was like a real death. This resulted in not only the strength of Su Ming's will increasing by leaps and bounds, but he also obtained innumerable awakenings, the precise number of which even he himself did not know. With each awakening, his potential would increase a little. This unforeseen circumstance of him awakening an endless amount of times in the Candle Dragon's undying and imperishable world now caused a miscalculation in Di Qian's plans, and had also molded Su Ming to become greater. Almost at the instant the big mouth formed from the yin death fog closed in on Su Ming, his expression twisted. He lifted his head swiftly and let out a low roar towards that mouth. Yin death aura is the aura within my body. How dare you try to devour me? Su Ming's roar reverberated in all directions. Veins popped up on his face, and as his roar echoed in the air, the gigantic vortex in the sky rumbled as well. The big mouth that closed in on Su Ming shuddered, and fear as well as hesitation appeared on the malicious spirit's face. Then, as Su Ming roared, it changed its direction, turned its head, and charged towards the black-robed Di Qian. Powerful killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes. With a single move, he rushed towards Di Qian like a shooting star. It did not matter whether this was his clone or his magical body, the entire world of berserkers was filled with Su Ming's murderous aura, and whoever it was that he wanted to kill had to die. Di Qian, you're going to die. Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot. The seal in his head continued breaking, and his memories raged in his mind like a storm. Almost at the instant Su Ming charged towards Di Qian, nearly 10,000 long arcs that looked as if they had blotted out the sky and covered the earth rushed over from the horizon. The person in the lead was All Entities Clan's Grand Clan Elder, Xianxia, a berserker who had attained great completion in the berserker soul realm. Excitement was rife in his eyes. The berserkers behind him were all burning with passion, and their roars traveled forward with a loud echo. At that instant, there were also nearly 10,000 long arcs charging forward from another direction. The person in their lead was an old man that was as thin as a skeleton. That old man was Xianxia, the elder of the great tribe of Surging Clouds.